Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 Podcast. My name's Parm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Chrono Passion 7. Hello and welcome to another show. Today we've got another very special guest, and I know Andy's itching to tell you all about him. So Andy, who have we got on the show today then?
So today we have a very good friend of ours, Martin Green, and he is an absolute legend in our minds. Martin, just for our listeners, just to introduce yourself, let them get to know you a little bit.
Well, Andy, Parm, thanks for having me. I've been part of the watch industry now for 25 years, and I started like most people. I got an interest in watches in my late teens, decided that I wanted to have one. I actually forgone the purchase of a car to get my first watch, and then, like many of us, I was hooked. I was not prepared for the journey that it brought me, because for me it was not only a journey as a collector, as a watch enthusiast, but it also became a profession. I've been working in watch stores. I have been writing for a long time now for different publications. I worked for Christie's, writing for them. I was managing editor of Ho Time, and now I'm editor at large for Watch Time, and as they call it so nicely, the resident gentleman of Quill and Pad. So that's actually what I do on a day-to-day basis, is writing about watches, studying them, and sharing the passion.
You share that passion with us on a daily basis, and we learn so much from you as well.
I just want to add, that was a very humble introduction from yourself there, Martin. Very humble. And there's much more he could say, but being the gentleman he is, that's all he's going to say.
So we're excited to be able to share Martin's great knowledge with all our listeners. But Parm, I think we've got something we need to do, right?
Yep, and that is a quick wristwatch check. Martin, being a guest on our show, what have you got on the wrist then?
Today I actually have the last generation of the GMT Master from Rolex on my wrist. This one is from 1989. If I remember correctly, it's the first from the last series that Rolex made from the GMT Master. I know that most people prefer the GMT Master 2 because then you can independently set the hand for the second time zone. I actually prefer the original GMT Master because I think it's closer to the original, and I just like the fact that it's a little less complex to move about. I got it actually with the black bezel, so no Pepsi. No Coke, because I feel it's a little bit more under the radar. Plus, it scratches two of my itches, because now I don't feel like I have to buy a Submariner. So it's basically killing two birds with one stone, or one watch in this case.
Oh, very nice. Very shrewd purchase there as well. 2 with 1. I love a bargain. So there you go.
Exactly. I love how we always lie to ourselves and tell these things. No, I just have Rolex, and it's a bargain because I bought this Rolex, I don't have to buy 2 other Rolex.
I don't have to buy the other ones now, but we end up getting something else instead anyway. But
of course.
Cool. Yeah. That's a beautiful watch there, Martin. Lovely.
So, but honestly, I'm curious, what has Andy on his wrist?
Okay, so it's over to me. So I'm wearing a very new purchase. It's a Rolex also, so there's a theme here, and it's for 1007. A very beautiful tropical dial, in my humble opinion. I know there's a split, in the community on tropics, but for me, this is a natural defect due to the lack of which Rolex were using at that period of time, and it's just from being in a tropical climate, being in the sun, and being worn and loved frequently. So for me, it's just got so much character, and it almost feels like a one-of-one Rolex for me to wear on the wrist. I know not for everybody, but for me, I absolutely love it. I love having a Rolex back on my wrist, as I haven't had one in my collection for a little while now. So honestly, it just feels like home, having a Rolex on again. And I mentioned on the previous episode that I wanted to restart my collection, start again, which leads great into today's episode, what we're going to be discussing, and I will mention that a bit later. But I've made the mistakes to finally understand where I need to go back to and then build out from. And I think just always having a Rolex as a daily central piece in your collection, you can't really go wrong. It's always feels like home to me when I wear a Rolex, and it's giving me so much joy. I'm not going to lie, I'm really, really enjoying it. But I'm not going to keep crushing on Rolex for the whole episode. I'm going to hand over to Parm and see what Parm is rocking.
Now I think these guys are winding me up because I've just spent a whole month wearing a Rolex, so I'm not wearing one anymore. And so on my wrist is my Tissot PRX quartz with the green dial, 40 millimeters diameter, integrated bracelet, 316L steel. It's just such a nice and easy watch to wear. It's just one of those things, it's quartz as well. You just pick it up, put it on, and go. And ironically, at a couple of watch events I've been to, this is the one that catches people's eye. Of all the watches I've worn, this is the one that seems to catch people's attention more than any other, which is really strange, is because it's probably one of the most affordable watches in my collection, but it's also the easiest to wear. And that green sunburst is pretty special, actually. It's a really nice watch.
A brilliant watch. I think I remember trying the PRX for the first time, and it was actually yours, Parm. And the first thing what struck me was the sheer quality of that watch for the price point. It felt so solid and robust. Like, it does feel like a premium watch.
It's really well made. It's not cheap rubbish. It's actually a very, very well made, very respected watch as well. I got the quartz one. It's a bit of fun. I don't take it to be a serious watch in my collection, but it's a very nice and easy watch. But yeah, very well made.
May I ask you, Parm, now you have the quartz one and you enjoy it so much and it's so well made, would you consider the automatic as well?
No, not really, because I think this is enough. I liked the aesthetic of this watch. That was the thing. And if I couldn't get on with it, I probably would. If I was thinking, no, it's just not doing it for me, it's just not floating my boat, I probably would have. But I just think it's good enough. Again, this could actually be good enough just to one watch it. If I ever gave up this whole madness and thought I'm going to sell everything, the Explorer one, if it was mechanical, but this one, if I just had to keep one quartz watch affordable, it'd be this one, because it's such a versatile piece.
It's also a very dangerous watch, because these are the kind of watches that suck people into high-end watchmaking.
Yes.
They have a little money, they want to buy a nice watch, they go to a dealer, they buy this beautiful Tissot, they actually truly immensely enjoy it, and then they're going to look like, oh, I'm enjoying this so much, I'm going to look what else is out there. So to me, these kind of watches are always like a gateway drug.
Yes, the gateway watch.
About to say the same.
Luckily, I bought this way into my addiction, so it's not going to make me, unless I bought the automatic, which I probably won't. I think I'm safe.
Wait until you try the automatic chronograph.
Oh, yes, I have seen that the Panda one looks really cool. Actually, now what you're doing? Look, Martin, now I'm going to be on Google after this.
Now he's selling.
You got some for sale? Right.
Yeah. Do you work for Tissot?
So again, that could have been a mistake of mine. That buying the quartz, was it a mistake? Which nicely leads us in to our topic, which Andy is going to tell us all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So watch mistakes is our topic today. We're going to have 3 loose criteria today, which we will talk around. So we're going to talk about the mistakes we have made and why we think that was actually a mistake. Like, maybe to somebody else that wasn't, but to us it was. Then what did we learn from making that mistake? I can tell you, as many of our listeners know, I've got thousands of mistakes. And from that, in reflection, if we could speak to ourselves at the very beginning of our watch journey, what advice would we give ourselves? Would we say, just enjoy what you did? You made mistakes, but that's the only way you got to where you are today? Or would you give different advice and some maybe better tips on starting that initial collection? So I think it's going to be a great conversation, and I'd like to hand over to our guest, Martin. I'd love to know some of your mistakes. And I feel that we're kind of similar in this sense, that we've made a few. But which mistakes really still stand out to you within your journey?
This is a very confronting topic, I must say. Like, the mistakes you make, especially because, we discussed this topic beforehand and I was pondering about it. And it turns out I make so many mistakes. And let me tell you about one of the earliest mistakes I made, and it's really a terrible one. The first watch I actually got was an Omega Seamaster Professional. The James Bond configuration, as it was in the late 1990s. So it was Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. So it was the automatic movement, 42 millimeter case, the larger model with the blue wavy dial and the blue aluminum bezel. And that got me crazy about Omega. And these were the days that we still had the watch forums. And everybody was always like, there were certain discussions that were like more dominant than others, and one of them was like Omega Speedmasters. So, and they were very popular. So in my mind, I got this image that I needed to get an Omega Speedmaster. I found my way to going to a different town for the day, and there was a store of a vintage watch dealer. He also did new and vintage, so basically your average watch dealer that is not an official representative of the brands. And he had an Omega Speedmaster in the display. So I went in, and it turns out he had two. There already made my first mistake because I didn't really read into the topic. So he had two. He had a brand new one, box, papers, everything unworn. And he had a vintage one, a caliber 321. I had no idea what a caliber 321 was. All I saw was this old, slightly beat up chronograph. And I was like, nah, I want the new one. I want to make my own stories with it. I want the shiny one. I want the box. So I bought that on the spot because everybody was crazy about a Speedmaster. So why wouldn't I be crazy about a Speedmaster? It was not a good purchase because the Speedmaster and I, while it is an amazing watch, we are just not meant for each other. I learned that when it comes to Omega, I love Seamasters. I love Constellations. I love DeVille's. But the Speedmaster, it's a great watch, but it's simply not for me. So not only did I pass up on a caliber 321, I also actually bought a watch that I should have never, ever bought. At least I should have tried it on before and maybe thought about it some more. But in the end, it might also be the mistake that taught me the most.
It's really interesting. So, and I know I'm sure Pam's got a similar feeling. But one, from being a vintage watch guy, I can totally understand the pain of missing out on the 321. But sometimes you've got to learn that that's maybe the watch for you. But what is it about the Speedmaster which makes it not for you? What is it what you don't like about it?
How do I say this nicely without offending people that actually do love the Speedmaster?
Just say what you want. Yeah.
I found it a bit boring on my wrist. It just didn't really hit home. Mine also, the engraving in the case back, it was kind of sharp, and I was used to the smoothness of the case back of my Seamaster. So it was always irritating on my wrist, and that also got me a little bit annoyed. And I guess that the story behind the Speedmaster, by moon exploration and that sort of thing, it didn't stuck with me once the watch was on my wrist.
You didn't feel like an astronaut?
I didn't feel like an astronaut at all. So
okay.
Literally, the Speedmaster, even when I owned it, it always felt like I was wearing somebody else's watch. And I find it hard to describe. And actually kind of funny because you also had the Speedmaster reduced with the automatic movement, the value 750. I still like that one. So, I might be tempted. And actually, my opinion about it being too boring is not even valid because I do like DeVille chronographs. Actually, even more boring when they have them on the wrist, but they're more like a dress watch. And in the end, I'm more like a dress watch kind of guy. So sometimes perhaps you also can put it really into words why one watch sticks with you and another watch doesn't. I mean, there are plenty of watches that I can think of that are amazing. There should absolutely be no reason why you do not want to wear that watch. But when it's on your wrist, it's just not for you.
Yeah. Okay. So the physical connection just didn't happen.
It wasn't there.
You didn't fall in love. It's interesting. I tried on a friend's 1969 Speedmaster, and I really vibed with that watch. At that initial moment, I was like, this is really cool. I don't know if it was obviously the faded bezel, had the elasticated bracelet, which they were doing back then. And I thought it was really cool. But I think we're similar in some ways, being more dressy watch guys. So I'm trying to think if the Speedmaster would bore me as well.
Would.
Like, I've never been drawn to pull the trigger. I've always thought it's a bit, it doesn't get me so excited either. So it's an interesting one. But yeah, the Speedmaster, it's for listeners who do own them and love them dearly, they're fantastic watches. But again, it's horses for courses, as we say. It's rather the correct watch for you, or it's not, right? We can't all be the same, and that's the beauty of this hobby, I think. But we all like different styles and different watches.
I've got an interesting story too. It's not like the reverse of yours, Martin, but there are similarities, but in opposite ways. So that very same Seamaster that you have, I was going to buy one for the James Bond connection. I'd liked watches, but I was not a big watch nerd back then. And I went to the store. I almost bought one. I tried it on. It might have even been during the Daniel Craig days. It's possibly after that. And I went to get the watch, the blue dial, the wave dial, Seamaster 300 meter professional. I just realized there was like a few people that office. My manager wore one. A couple of people on my team had one, and there was a few people down the office who had, and it was the watch to have. It was the James Bond watch. If they'd carried on with Submariners, everyone would have been wearing those because they were a lot more available back then. Probably a bit more expensive, but more available. And then I got to the store and I tried it on. And I just thought, I just can't follow the herd here. So I'm not going to get it. What else do you have with Omega? And they told me about the Speedmaster and the whole history of not the whole history, it would have been a long lunch hour, of the moon landings and the moon watch. And I tried it on and I thought, okay, you're right. And they said, this has been to the moon. So unfortunately for me, through my lack of knowledge, all I thought was marketing, trying to sell me the watch. And I thought, well, okay, I get it. I like it, but I didn't make that connection. And then with me, they're talking about value earlier on as well. I saw the triple date. The day date, as it was known back then, Speedmaster. It had everything, and a chronograph as well. Which probably, let's face it, wasn't that. But it's kind of cool having a chronograph. And this was a nice watch. And I thought, okay, you know what? That's got more going on with it. So So later on, I went away, looked for a better deal, found one on Watchfinder back in the day, the original days of Watchfinder, and I got that watch. And for years I wore it and I loved it. And it was everything, especially when you're working, in an office environment and off-site, and you need to keep a track of date and time. It's very important. And only once I got into where I am now with watches, I had Moonwatch envy. I almost bought it. Why did I not buy that watch? This is the one to have, not this one. It's all about the Moonwatch. It's not about, I didn't resent it. I kind of thought, well, maybe I thought I made a mistake. Yeah. And I probably did. And then I moved it on for something else. I haven't got another Speedmaster in the collection. And we went to Zenith and I just saw the complicated chronographs they had there. It just made me think that was actually a really good watch. And I had this resentment towards it because everyone's supposed to have the Moonwatch, which I would like to have in my collection. But I just thought sometimes you don't know what you have because you get caught up in what you should have and what other people's opinions are. No one ever put the watch down. It was always everyone liked it. It was quite busy though. The only criticism it took was the dial was very busy because it did so much. But now I'm thinking it's based on an ETA 7751 movement in-house, but based on that good movement, loads of functionality, complications. And now I think the mistake was not letting it go, but not appreciating it as much as I could have. Because that was a really good watch.
That's really, really interesting. I think the underlying feeling here, and maybe all three of us have had this, and I'm sure many listeners also, but it's kind of like you don't feel in your infancy of watch collecting and lack of knowledge, you start to feel that this watch isn't worthy. It's not the watch which everybody talks about. It's a bit left of field, what's maybe you feel isn't respected. And by that, you start to resent the watch, resent that purchase, like, oh, I bought the wrong one because this isn't the one what everybody goes crazy for. And I think that's partly down to maybe some kind of social pressures or modern day influencers on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else, and just collecting circles. But I think it comes a point in your collecting journey of maturity where you buy a watch for yourself. You don't care what other people think about it because it's your watch at the end of the day. So why wear a watch what's popular if you hate it? Just so people go, oh yeah, you've got the watch.
One more thing people said was, oh, that's a great entry-level Speedmaster. And that was another thing that was okay. And then it was, I know, and I was thinking, well, okay. But then in hindsight, it was much more complicated than the Moonwatch. So, okay, you may not be able to go to the moon. It was automatic as well. It wasn't mechanical. The mechanical thing was to keep with the heritage I get. But it was just like, that's a great entry-level watch. And I was like, well, in hindsight now, where I'm sitting today, I think those people that were saying that were very, very wrong because that was a really good watch. A lot going on with it and sat really well. It was a 40 mil as well, I think. Nice domed crystal. Very different aesthetic from the Speedmaster, but it was in the Speedmaster range.
I think the best advice that you could probably give yourself early on is to take time to actually find your own voice, find what you truly love in watches, which is, of course, hard because, like you already say, Andy, there's so much on social media, it's hard to find what you actually really like, but it also means that you need to experience things. So to some extent, these might also be mistakes that cannot be avoided.
Yeah.
I agree with that, yeah. I think you have to make mistakes unless, like for me, I when I using Parm as a good example, I see Parm as very calculated with his decisions behind his collection. And I don't think, we'll find out in this episode, I don't think he's made so many mistakes. I think for the most part, he's always been quite content. As for me, on the flip side, I think I've made loads of mistakes. Like, I have sold watches because I think it's not good enough to be in the watch collecting circle. Again, going back to my beginner days, my naive days, I had open heart Zenith El Primero, for example. I thought it was really cool on the wrist. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I remember, it was those lockdown COVID period of days, and I'd go on various live streams where you interact with the community like a live chat, because you're losing your mind, you're trapped in your house, right? And I'd ask people, hey, what do you think? What do you think to this NFL Primero? And I can't remember the reference right now, but it's the old school open heart. And oh no, that's you get rid of that, sell it for Rolex. You need Rolex, and part of the role you need Rolex is correct. Maybe you need a Rolex at some point in your collection, maybe, but it doesn't mean you should get rid of another watch if you like it for a Rolex. So I was kind of easily influenced in my early days, I think, and I didn't appreciate, similar to Parm, what I had at the time. Same with an Omega Apnea, which was very cool. That's quite sought after these days. It's quite a rare piece. And yeah, all the way up to, as maybe, I don't want to talk too much about this story, but I traded up. I started with the thought of you only need one watch. Like, that's all I thought I needed at the beginning. And I went from, just very quickly, Jaeger-LeCoultre memo box. I made the mistake of not knowing anything about millimeters. So I just bought it off Chrono 24. It was like, I don't know, it's like 31 millimeter, very, very small. Now, in my maturity of collecting, I'd probably wear it and appreciate it for what it is. But back then, again, because of social pressures, oh man, that's a girl's watch, that size, nobody should wear that. So of course, sell it, buy the next watch, until I got to the part where I was really unhappy with all of the Zeniths and Omegas, what I tried. And I was like, okay, I need Rolex. So I bought the Air King, the first Bloodhound dial Air King. I think it's the 116900 from memory, the reference, or something along those lines. Don't quote me on it, but the Bloodhound dial, the first edition of that, the one where people get upset about the 5 not being even. That was my first Rolex. I felt that was the first proper step into a proper watch, but it still wasn't quite for me, that particular watch. And then I finally, due to the markets being on my side, I've told this story before, I ended up being in a position where I could swap that Air King and then have the Oyster Quartz day date. This is my mistake, because that watch was phenomenal. I loved it. Excellent movement, excellent watch. It had Catalan days, which, I've said in previous episodes, from me coming from the north of England, packing up my whole life and moving here to Barcelona and making a relatively decent success of it, and seeing that link with the Catalan days was special to me, and it was a really special watch. And I was just in this cycle of, I need to trade, and I don't want to put more money in, so I just need to swap it. And then I got up to a Patek Calatrava, the 119R, and again, I wasn't ready for that watch. I peaked too soon. I had a very high-level dress watch, which I would absolutely appreciate now, knowing what I know now. But back then, I didn't have the maturity to understand truly how special that piece was, which I was wearing. But it all leads back. The one what really gave me satisfaction was the Rolex and the day date. So that's my biggest mistake. I should have kept that day date. And I don't know why I got into this swapping habit, and I did. It went so bad that I ended up with an Azimuth Mr. Robot watch, and really random pieces in my collection. I had a King Midas, which again is a pretty cool watch, but it was just out of control.
Andy, sorry, that King Midas was so cool on that red strap. It was. I'm sure in your group you could get it back. Maybe the price might be different, but it's when people say you don't need it and you moved it on. What was it yourself telling you, or was it other people? What was the stimulus there?
So at which stage? At the beginning stage or in the mid?
The day date point.
I don't know. I don't know why I did it. And I'm really, I don't want to swear, but I'm really annoyed at myself to this day. My friend just sent me pictures of, hey, I've got this Patek. It was his, day date originally. So I think he was trying to angle it like, hey, he was missing it too. And he wanted to make a deal. And the price was very, very attractive on that Calatrava. I'm like, it's a Patek Philippe, I knew that much. and I just went for it. And I should have declined. But yeah, I learned the mistake. What's my lesson from that? My lesson, getting back, I believe it was a mistake that I was just in a spiral of not even having enough time to bond or appreciate a watch to understand what it was. And I think I was trying to move too quickly, too soon, without even educating myself. So, difference to prior is I have educated myself a lot more. I still have a lot more to go. But with the pieces I have now, currently, I'm absolutely satisfied with. So I'm hoping moving forward, I just get out of that mindset, and build a correct collection. I'll still probably make mistakes, but I hope I do it in the right way rather than just, swap this for that, rather than just, no, you love this watch, keep it. If you can't buy it right now, forget about it and buy it once you can. That's what I need to do. So, yeah. But maybe that's a lesson. Maybe not for everybody, but it's certainly a lesson for me. I don't know if anybody else has
If you
traded like
didn't
that.
do that, you wouldn't have known you made a mistake as well. Sometimes, experiences
Correct.
give us that insight.
That's true.
Yeah. It's brought me back to this Rolex, which I honestly adore. I like it probably as much as the Oyster Quartz. It's just got a vibe to it, what's my style. And it just feels perfect. So I think I know what I want now. And again, is all roads lead back to Rolex, which we've been saying in our chat, right? I think, Parm, you say all roads lead to Rolex.
Martin has corrected us, yeah. All roads lead back to Rolex.
Lead back. But yeah, I feel like I've been talking about my mistakes too much, but I'd love your opinions on my mistakes. So.
Well, honestly, I think that's something that happens a lot. I have that too, You get a watch, and before you even give yourself time to appreciate it, you're already on to hunting for the next one. It's like an endless cycle. And if you're like me, you go on eBay and you go on Chrono24 and all the other platforms that you see this watch and that watch, and you see prices go up and prices go down. And sometimes just all of a sudden you see this great deal. And you buy the watch just because it's a great deal. And then you can end up with some pretty funky watches in your collection. Is it a mistake? Sometimes it is, because sometimes I've had instances where I bought it too soon. It sometimes also works the other way around. There are watches that I bought because they were a great deal, and it was like spur of the moment thing. And I shouldn't have done it. But I actually ended up with a watch that I otherwise, if I thought about it, would have never bought. But because I did and experienced it, I really fell in love with it. You do have to be careful with that, because perhaps a funny story from my watchmaker. He doesn't buy many watches, but there was one watch, I think it was like a Ray Vuitton that he wanted. So he went on the website and he saw it and he clicked it and he bought it. Turns out that he didn't read the ad correctly enough. So it turns out that he did not buy the regular version, but he bought the oversized version, which was 50 millimeters.
50.
Well, imagine sitting 50, 50. So yes, so he was like, he felt like he bought something to hang on his
that's
wall.
a mistake.
That's a mistake. That's a mistake. So he did not know how to sell that one fast enough. But in general, that's another topic I actually wrote down to discuss with you guys. Sometimes it's like FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Brands used it as a marketing tool. You get a limited edition, and you better buy it now, because otherwise you can never buy it again. It also goes if you see a great deal on like one of these forums or sales platforms. You have to act now, otherwise it's gone. So, and especially when you don't pace yourself, like you don't look at your current collection and enjoy that.
That's an interesting point you just put there about looking at your current collection. When when one buys another watch, are they thinking of their current collection, or is it new, shiny?
To me, it's new and shiny.
To me also.
Yeah, and I must say that has resulted in a very eclectic collection. In all honesty, I'm still jealous of the people that have one great watch that they live their entire lives with. I don't think I can do that. Of course, it's also my profession, so it's not uncommon for me to change watches 4 times a day. Also because, you get loaners in and loaners go out. So and you need to experience them on the wrist, because otherwise you can't really write about them. But it is new and shiny. It is new and shiny, I think.
So you don't think I've already got this And therefore, this like you mentioned with the GMT Master you have, you wouldn't need a Submariner. I guess you wouldn't need a 50 fathoms. You'd think, right, this kind of covers that.
Well, this one really struck home with me. Actually, I also got this watch by accident because I was wearing another watch. And I visited a dealer who's also a friend, and he took a liking to the watch I was wearing. And he's like, "You want to swap?" And he offered me this GMT
Yeah.
Master. So that was kind of also like a spur of the moment thing. But yeah, it's another mistake I actually wrote down for this episode of the podcast. Is a mistake that I made is buying too many of the same watches. Like I really like small dress watches, gold. I prefer white or yellow, but at some point I loved them so much that it was the only thing I was buying and adding to my collection. Then you end up with a box full of watches that are all great individually, but when they're all together, it kind of looks like, a box of chocolates. They're all pretty much the same flavor.
Were you like, I'm going out? It doesn't make any
Any
difference. I
on,
just
yeah.
stick my hand in the box. I close my eyes and pull one out.
Yeah, lucky dip.
In some cases, the only difference to most people, of course, we notice all the details. The only difference was the brand name on it.
Yeah.
And the movement. If you dig a little deeper. But I mean, I kept buying the same watch over and over again because it's what I liked. But that does not necessarily make for a great collection. Then you get to another point: is what is a great collection? A great collection is what makes you happy.
Exactly. Who defines a great collection? Yourself, right?
You define that. But it's also another issue that I have is that there's so many cool watches. And it is like you say, you show, today you're wearing your Green Dial PRX. And I already made a note like, okay, I need to look into that. You talk with people. Yes, but that's how it goes. You talk with people. You talk with other collectors. And you see their watches. You're like, whoa, that's cool. That's cool. But there's so many cool watches and you can't own them all.
It's 100%.
I think that might also be a mistake. Trying to own them all.
Yes.
So correct.
That's
correct.
Impossible.
That's why I swapped so much.
Impossible.
Possibly, yeah, because you thought, well, I want this one now, and I want that one, and the only way to do it was to circulate that money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, about the period of time, like I should have put more money in, but I had a rule of thumb where I'm like, okay, this amount's going in, move it around. And I would like the Azimuth, Mr. Roboto, for example, is a really cool watch, but it shouldn't be, for me, it's not a primary piece to have in your collection. It's not the most practical. It's huge, but it's fun for occasions. It did give me enjoyment, but it was just a bit too ridiculous for where I was within my collection. And I think more thought needs to go in, from my perspective, into my collection now, which I'm really trying to apply and trying to get rid of that impulsive behavior, like you touched on, Martin, where it's like, a great example, my friend. Look at this Patek. I'll sell you it for €1,300 if you do it. 13,000 euros. Not, I wish
1,300.
I wish. Yeah, 13,000.
That would be a good.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that would be brilliant. But,
that's no mistake.
Yeah, I take it. Yeah, but it was. I take your oyster quartz. You give me $1,000 on top, and we call it a deal. And for me, it wasn't because I loved the Patek. In reflection. I did it because it was a good deal. I didn't do it because I loved it. I loved it for Rolex. But I was thinking to myself, well, this is a bargain. You've got to do it. But maybe you shouldn't do that sometimes. You should stick with where you're at. Like this watch I have now, the new Rolex. I am not swapping this with anybody. I'm serious. I'm not. It's mine. I'm done.
Listeners, take note.
Take note.
Remember,
every group, every single group I am in. Yeah, all the sellers, dealer groups I'm in, what I'm very lucky to be in, I have told everybody it's not available. And if I ever relapse and put it in there because I'm stupid, none of you are to accept it or acknowledge it. So that is that. I'm not doing anything. So I've learned my mistakes from that.
I also think that as a collector, you grow, once you've experienced more watches, once you've owned more watches, when you talk to more people, once you've seen more of the industry, when you read more books, articles, see more posts on Instagram, you grow. And you grow out of watches and you grow into watches. At least that's my theory. And sometimes a great watch comes too soon. Like that Patek for you. On the other end, sometimes I think some watches are really cool to own, but only when they are added on to an already pretty established collection, like your
Yeah.
Mr. Roboto. I also think that's a very cool watch, but I don't think that should be anybody's second or third watch. It maybe should be watch number 10.
100%
So,
correct.
another another mistake that I made was not respecting my own limitations. I have a very medium-sized wrist, and I fell in love with. Okay, was a bit of an odd love affair, but I know if you ever heard the company European Company Watch, it's a horrible name. They also go by the name of ECW, and it was, I believe, the brand was at one point part of the Frank Muller Group, and it was launched top of my head in the late 1990s, and it was early 2000s, and it was going to be the new Panerai. That didn't work out, I can tell you that. But the crazy thing, I had an F40, which has nothing to do with the Ferrari. Actually, don't even know why they called it the F40. But it was a chronograph, automatic, very nicely built in a monocoque case. But the case was like 25 millimeters thick, and it was like 44 millimeters in diameter. So it was like this huge hockey puck on your wrist, and I think it weighs like. The head alone of the watch was like 350 grams. So it was some serious real estate on your wrist. I thought it was so cool, and it did not go at all with my wrist. So, and that might also be another mistake, is that I actually had a time that I was hesitant to say goodbye to watches like that. Because what if I sold them and then I missed them? And
So you've touched on something for me. What I want to just mention. First of all, I completely understand the big watch from having the Crepper's hydrographer. That was again like 45 millimeter on the wrist. It was huge. So I know what it's like having like a hockey puck for the wrist. It's kind of cool for a bit, but then you grow out of it. But what I want to touch on, just from us three having so many conversations, off air, is a watch. What you keep talking to us about is the Oris, right? The large professional diver. So having that experience of having too big a watch for your wrist, but you're still talking about getting a watch which is very large for your wrist still. So I'm just curious around that.
That is true, but I think that watch is my Britney Spears, my guilty pleasure. So it's like the one that you kind of want to say,
baby, one more
oops,
time.
I did it again. Yeah, oops, I did it again. I don't know. I had the good fortune that because I'm in the industry that I get to try out a lot of watches, press release parties, and big shows like Watches and Wonders. This was at Geneva Watch Days, and the Oris, when it was on my wrist, it just felt so good. It was like really a guilty pleasure. Is it too big for my wrist? Yes, I must say it sat slightly better on my wrist than the European company watch because the way the lugs were constructed and the strap was constructed. So I think the Oris is overall a better design. So it's more wearable despite the fact that it is so large and heavy.
So Martin, just for the benefit of our listeners, which Oris are we talking about here?
Good question, Parm. It's the Aquis Pro 4000 meters. So it's this huge diving watch. I think it's actually kind of fun because there was a time when it was really en vogue for brands to have like watches that you could dive really deep with, although nobody ever actually did. And it's just bold and big.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't like it as a guy that prefers ultra thin dress watches. But because of it, it's the guilty pleasure. And
it's the opposite, yeah.
Right now it would also, my collection is at a stage where it could actually be a guilty pleasure. I don't know if I would buy it actually. And I know that if I ever buy it, I probably won't wear it that often. So that also makes you think like, should I put my money towards that or should I save it for a watch that will probably get more wrist time? But I think that's a constant debate that many watch collectors have in their minds.
Yeah.
Where are we going to put it?
Yeah, the number of watches we Google and look at on Chrono24 or wherever compared to what we actually buy is infinitesimal. It's tiny.
Yeah. Like one comment I'd add is, okay, you might have a watch, what you would buy, what you could wear more frequently. However, you already have that within your collection. So having this rather wild watch, even though you'd wear it less frequently, when you do wear it, it gives you a completely different sensation when you wear it, an enjoyment level compared to what else you've got. So then does that validate it? If, okay, I wear it less, but when I do wear it, I absolutely, love it. And then that makes sense, right? To a
True,
point, I think.
true. But the question is, can't you achieve the same thing with less money? I mean, the Oris is still a 4,000 euro plus watch, which I think it's worth it. But to have that as a guilty pleasure, it's still a lot of money to put into one watch. So I do agree with you, Andy, but you can also, get something else, something funkier for less money, maybe that also scratch the same itch.
Yeah.
So, like the Quartz PRX is a lower priced guilty pleasure. Like, I want a sports integral. I don't want to get a ridiculously priced Royal Oak or anything like that. But this scratches the itch because I know it's just a design that's quite on vogue at the moment, and it doesn't cost much. I think that, as you say, just do you have to put £4,000 towards that, scratching that itch? I don't think I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's like the same. Like you want a convertible that's fun to drive. Does that mean you buy a Porsche 911 convertible? But you could do that. But it could also be like a Mazda Miata or MX-5, as it's called in Europe, which basically does the same thing.
It's the flex. It's how much it means to you. It's how much would that mean to you? Like, the branding Porsche would mean a lot to people, a lot more.
True.
And they would put the money in. Whereas those people wouldn't want to get a Mazda. But
that's a good point.
Again, yeah. I mean, if you bought an Ultra Deep, those are quite big. They're kind of in the same kind of bracket, right?
Those are cool too. That would also scratch the itch.
Yeah.
But honestly, yeah, you're right about that, Parm, because when it comes to dress watches, I would not consider a quartz gold-plated dress watch, because that simply would not do it for me. I want to have the ultra-thin movements. I want the real gold case. I want a brand with some heritage in that area. So I guess that is a watch where I want that flex.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's more of an essential part of my collection.
Yes, exactly. That's you. That's why you're in it. The trimmings around it are the guilty pleasure, the little trimmings around, like you say, the Robotos and the PRXs. That's, those are the nice bits that you can add on. But the core is that has to be right.
Yeah. That's never resonated with me more than current day. How much I understand that from having a terrible core collection. What doesn't hit.
I'll tell you something.
So I know exactly how
you remember mine, Andy. It was all, every watch pretty much looked the same. It was only going back 2 years.
Multiple Tudors.
I had 3 Tudors. I had the Speedmaster, which actually looked quite different compared to the others. A Sub No Date, Explorer 2. The Seamaster was different in white dial. There were little splashes of difference, and all the ones that looked pretty much the same, I think they've all gone now. It's quite strange. Let me try and think. Apart from the Explorer 39mm, that's the only one that's still in there that is, and the brightening again, but that was quite different. That had a grey dial, so it had a slight pop of colour.
But that is us. That is us and how we like to collect. I also know people that were all over the place, and then all of a sudden, they bought a Rolex Submariner. Something connected with them. And now their entire collection is Rolex Submariners. That is,
I can see that. I can see that.
It's all about finding your own voice, your own happiness within the huge world of watches, which is so diverse.
Yeah.
The beauty is there's no right and there's no wrong. And what we might call a mistake, somebody else is like, well, that's just the way how I collect. I also know collectors, they do it like you, Andy. They initially put in a certain amount of money. They don't really have the luxury, or they don't want to add on to that. So they just trade every once in a while, and then they have a new watch, and then they experience it, and they live with it for maybe a couple of months or a couple of years, and then, they trade it again. So I think that's also what makes the world of watches so rich and rewarding. Look at us. We're already touching this topic for about almost like an hour.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm still not
I'm
done talking.
I'm none the wiser.
I don't think we've even scratched the
Yeah.
surface.
No.
Honestly, I think
So,
we're
so that's
just
question.
getting
So that's
started.
question one. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
But just one thing, digging into a bit more of a psychological aspect to it. Do you think that watch collectors feel like they have to have a thing, like the gentleman or I assume it's a gentleman, the person you spoke about had to have the sub collection. Someone has to have, oh, my thing is this, or my thing is that, or some people's thing is I need a watch from every brand. Oh, I must have one from every brand. The logic behind that, does that show you're a more rounded collector, or you just you're all tied up in nice tidy bundles? What is
It's
this thing there?
it's like going to the ice cream store. Some people go there, and they always give me chocolate and vanilla, and they're perfectly happy with it.
Mm.
And when they go to another ice cream store, they also order chocolate and vanilla. And you can really pinpoint what's the difference between them. Other people, they just go to an ice cream store and they want to try all the crazy flavors. Like unicorn popsicle, or I don't know what else you can think of.
Blue banana.
And yeah, there's just stuff like that. Exactly. So again, I think there's no right or wrong. I do think, we're people, so we always like to be part of a community.
Yeah.
So I think that what you surround yourself with might also have some reflection on your collection. So if a lot of people around you are into Rolex, I guess it's probably more likely that you get into Rolex as well, especially if it's people that you look up to. But in the end, there's really not such a thing as a wrong watch. It's
Hang on. I have to stop you there. The Tudor Ranger must come close.
Yeah, please. Yeah. That is the wrong watch. Let's just burn it now, live on air. Any watch is fine. Absolutely
I was
any.
with you.
Even
I
a
was
watch
with you
with
up
My
to
Little
there, yeah.
Pony. But
so
of a Ranger.
you guys really have something against the Tudor Ranger.
We joke. It's a great watch. We joke a little, but it was
it.
just the way Tudor launched things sometimes. That.
Yeah. So Harry's horology once again.
Sorry, Harry. Yeah.
Sorry, we respect your watch. We do. We just kind of don't know. But we do respect you hugely.
Respect you, yeah. Right. So there's no such thing as a wrong watch. That's food for thought, isn't it?
In all seriousness, I don't think there is. But I do think, in reflection, to try put some closure to this before we get to the final point, I'm grateful for the overall journey I have had, because I've had the experience to try so many different watches, so many wild watches. What people are like, wow, like the old JLC, which I had. I think, Martin, you saw that the first time we met, going back a year ago, right? The pre-Reverso JLC.
That was stunning.
Which is a cool watch, and I see it again. Like, I know the gentleman who has it, and I see it. I'm like, why did I move this on? But there must have been a reason. But bottom line, I've managed to sample so many different flavors in that ice cream store. Going back to that reference, to finally understand which flavors I do like, and for me, it has to be vintage Rolex. I think that's where I am. I really do. I love Piaget. I love Cartier as well. They're pieces what I would like around a core collection of cool, vintage Rolexes. And not hype. It doesn't have to be a hype vintage Rolex. It can be cool, Cellini's. It can be another Midas type Rolex again. But I just feel it's the brand what I really resonate with. I feel so content when I wear that brand. I don't know what it is. It's not for being approved by anybody. It's just I get an instant satisfaction what I don't get anywhere else.
Approved by Andy.
Andy approved. There you go.
Exactly.
Get the stamp.
Stamped.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So that's me. But for anybody who, somebody else could say 34mm ladies Rolex with a damaged dial, why are you wearing that? And that's fine. That can be their opinion. But to me, it's cool and I rock it. And that's the maturity I am at, which I'm grateful for. I've grown.
Andy, further to your point as well, and adding slightly on it, the more people you know who are watch collectors, I think it helps you in picking what you like. Because vintage watches, I've tried. Sorry, guys, I've tried, and I just can't get on with vintage. But my experience is trying Andy's. Some 100-year-old watch. I'm talking. He's had a lot of vintage watches, and for me, it's not wrong for anyone. It's just not for me. It doesn't do it for me. It probably, I don't know if it makes me less of a watch person. I don't know. I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I can say the same. I can flip it around. When I wear modern Rolex, I hugely appreciate
Yeah.
it. Hugely. The quality is superior to vintage, far superior. But it's just some character and charm what I like in vintage. But it's perfectly fine that doesn't resonate with everybody else, right? It's all about balance, I think.
Yeah.
Is the bottom line. So yeah, horses for courses again. You like the flavors you like, and there's no wrong or right. I think that's the underlying message here with all three of us is there's no wrongs or rights. You like what you like, and as long as you're content with what you're wearing, whether it is a one and done Tudor Ranger, in all seriousness, that's perfectly fine if that's what you're content with.
Yeah, and if you feel you've made mistakes, learn from them and just try not to make them again.
Yeah.
That's it. And impulsiveness possibly could be the creator of mistakes. I think we kind of touched on that as well.
Absolutely. So
if you be impulsive, doing it on a watch is probably not the worst thing you could do. You can also be impulsive on other things. So in the end, I don't think there's that much risk. You just might end up having to live with a watch that is not for you for a little while. Fortunately, the trade forums and platforms there are a hazard for impulse buying. Fortunately, they also work the other way around, and this means that you can sell your impulse buys again and put it towards something new. So most mistakes can easily be adjusted.
Okay, excellent. And I think that's all we have time for today.
I think we maybe need a part 2 because just we're hitting that hour marker. We haven't reflected on, what we wish we knew at the beginning, what we'd tell ourselves, at the start. But we'll come back to that in another part 2. So that's something to look forward to. But what a great start. And Martin, just what a privilege to have you with us as well.
Oh, this was fun, gentlemen. Let's do it again soon.
Yep, that has been a great show. Thank you so much, Martin. Martin is now a friend of the show, and we hope to have him on a lot more. His experience and knowledge is phenomenal. And as you heard today, he knows a lot of stuff, and he can add a lot of insights to everything we talk about.
Once again, thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been an absolute pleasure to share this time with you both. And I really hope our listeners have gained a bit of insight, maybe if they're in a situation what we've been in the past or in currently, hopefully we have helped you with a little bit of watch therapy, let's say. So please follow us on our Instagram. We'll put all our show notes and references there, which is chrono_passion_7. Just a little game I'm doing at the moment. Please, if you've got this far in the podcast, which is great, thank you for listening, just so we know you're connecting with these show notes, just drop a little number 7 in the comments. And please, if you want to give us any feedback, any topics you would like us to cover, please write it in the comments on the show notes as well. So once again, a huge honor and privilege from my side, and I'm going to sign off. I look forward to speaking to you all again very, very soon, but that's goodbye from me.
Thank you for joining us, Martin. We hope you enjoyed the show.
I definitely did. Until next time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's us done for today and done for another show. Please check the Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you and you'll hear us in the next one.